Hey everyone, it's Mr. Wildwood94. I hope you're doing well today. Today I'm going to review a Richard Lehman book. It'll be the first I've reviewed on this channel, but probably the fifth or sixth of his books that I've read. I really enjoy Richard Lehman. He's kind of a splatterpunk author, probably the first splatterpunk author of all time, if you will. A lot of bad stuff in his books, in the sense of horrible, horrific things, brutality to read or think about or have anybody come up with. It's insane. He is extremely creative. I really like his stuff. I read not too long ago his autobiography, sort of kind of autobiography, called A Writer's Tale, and I had to read the PDF file online because I can't find a copy of the regular book. It's like impossible. But as I read that book and heard him talk about his different projects, his different books that he had written in the past previously to that book, he talked about books like Savage, or Savages, whatever it is, that sounds amazing. It's like a Jack the Ripper book. He also, one of the big ones he kept hitting back to all the time, I think he was more proud of this book than most of his books, is Island. And this is a bigger Richard Lehman book. This book is about 500 pages, and it's a lot thicker than most of my Lehman books. The cover's okay. I know there's another cover out there. I don't know if it's the UK copy. He was very well known in the UK, of all things, more so than in the US, surprisingly, his home place. And the original cover is very much something I like more than this. But still, I like this cover. Richard Lehman is an extremely brutal writer in general. As I mentioned, if you're not familiar with him, you are not going to like Richard Lehman stuff. If you are used to Stephen King normie type stuff, if you want something that's going to haunt you and going to stick with you the rest of your life and going to bother you as you read it and after you finish reading the book and think about those things or think back to those things, this book and most of Lehman's works will stick with you and you will not let it go in your brain, I promise you. I really loved Island. I thought it was not a perfect book. I guess it was in total, but I didn't love it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really surprisingly good in the sense of I never wanted to put the book down, and every time I had to, I constantly thought about this book like all day at work, and it sucked. The general premise of the book is that essentially a family and our main character named Rupert, who was coming along with them as one of the daughter's boyfriends, just to kind of play the role, I guess, they all go on a yacht and go on an island that's kind of deserted by itself, and their yacht blows up, killing one of the members of the family named Wesley, and essentially the rest of them are just kind of stranded on the island. But things go awry when people slowly start showing up dead, and then another one will show up dead, and another one. So in the kind of sadness, sort of because they're not really sad about this guy Wesley dying in the explosion, some of them are actually making fun of it, which is kind of funny. It's kind of the kind of personality you get from Richard Lehman with some of his books, because everybody's a cynic in his books, man. But there are people who do miss Wesley, like his wife Thelma, who are very upset by this loss. It's such a weird blend of depression and the worry of not leaving the island, and also just everybody dealing with what's going on. And now the murders are taking place. They don't know who's causing it on the island. Is it somebody who's been on the island? Somebody who just got to the island? We don't know. The book itself is written in first person by the main character. As I said, his name is Rupert, and he is a sleazeball. He's a pervert. He's a weirdo. He's constantly looking at all the women on the island and thinking about how he wants to be with them, how they're so hot, because they pretty much all just came on vacation. They're all walking around in bikinis and stuff, especially Connie, his girlfriend's mother, who he thinks is just the absolute world. Then you have her other sister named Kimberly, who is very hot. Thelma, as I mentioned, Wesley's wife, the man who was blown up, and then his wife is still on the beach. She is one of the other sisters. As awful as Rupert is, as disgusting and vile as he is, I can't help but say that in some regard I like him. There's a little bit of a charm there with the way he writes this whole book, basically as a journal, as a diary, to keep up with the events of what's happening, because there's a lot that happens in this book developing the story. I think the most interesting part is that Rupert is so weak, and that kind of comes into play in the story a little bit in different times and different situations it gets stuck in. That's kind of fun. But Connie, the sister that brings him to the island, that's his girlfriend, is the most whiny, pathetic, jealous, envious woman I have ever seen in my life in a book, especially in a Richard Lehman book. She is one of the most unforgivable characters I've ever seen in my life because she doesn't stop whining all the time. All the time. This chick is crying. Not even crying. She's mostly just complaining and whining and bitching about everything she possibly can because Rupert thinks her mom and her sisters are hot as they're stuck on the island and horrible things are happening. You can't blame Rupert for starting to kind of look around and being like, what are my options if everybody else dies? You know what I mean? Connie never shuts up, and it never stops as you read this book. She's one of the worst Lehman characters, but deliberately so. So I kind of get it, but I kind of hate it at the same time. It makes you miserable. You also have Connie's father, Andrew, who's a very rude guy. He's very much a workout type, but he's also the rich guy that owned the yacht that brought all of them on vacation out here to this island. and he's kind of concerned because of what's happening with the murders and stuff. And he ain't a nice character, man. He's just kind of a mean man. He hates Rupert, pretty much cannot stand most of his family, even though he claims to love them. He's a mean guy, really, honestly. And that's kind of the sense you get from this book, is that pretty much every character but Billy, the mother/stepmother, is about just the meanest people you could probably ever read about, ever. Again, in a Richard Lehman book, everybody's a cynic. That's just par for the course. Now let's talk about the writing a little bit. Now, usually Lehman has a lot of rape in his stories, and there's some of that in here. This is surprisingly less gory than most of his books. His books are pretty horrifically gory. He does write a lot of thriller and slasher mainly type stuff, since he's a splatterpunk author, probably the first, like I said. And I'm surprised that there's not a whole lot of gore in here, like I'm used to seeing from this guy. But again, our main character, Rupert, is an absolute pervert, so like every chapter that's written in this book, at some point he's mentioning the other females out there that are wearing certain bikinis or whatever, and how hot they look and that kind of thing, and then fantasizing about them. That is a consistent thing in here, more so than I've ever seen in a Lehman book, which is kind of bizarre, but it is there. I just want to let you know that ahead of time. I know we're talking about the writing and the quality of the writing, but I'm just mentioning that as part of it. I think it's necessary to mention that. Lehman does a really good job of getting into Rupert's psychology, especially in the final chapter of the book where all the tension is built up and the finale is happening and everything. That last chapter was so wild. I couldn't believe it. That was fantastic writing. The way Lehman built up to that finale and the ending, confronting the killer. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I loved it. Of course, this is spoiler-free, so I can't tell you too much about it, but I really enjoyed that. I also think that the way Lehman described the beach setting and the jungle setting outside of the beach, just all of those things, the environments, he really developed that pretty well for all of the story. I really think Lehman did a fantastic job. You want to see some writing chops on Lehman? Read this book. Island proves that he is a fantastic writer, hands down. I got a little worried in this book because I got about 200 pages into it, and it actually felt like the finale of a book, where you're about to build into the third act. It did not go that route. I was 200 pages in, like I said. There was 300 pages left. I didn't know how that was going to work, and somehow Lehman did pull that off. It felt a little weird in the middle, because I was like, this feels like it should end now. Maybe it was told to be drawn out by a publisher or something, I'm not really sure. It wasn't too clunky, but it felt a little odd, like it was being dragged out about the middle area some. It wasn't too bad, but it varied enough where I thought it was worth mentioning for the review. Anyways, guys, I loved this book. I thought it was very good. Again, it wasn't perfect by any means, but I do think it was pretty great for what it was. I think Lehman did a fantastic job. This could easily be one of the best Lehman books of all time. I love Darkness Tell Us, but I'll tell you, this is really, really up there. It's really, really up there. Really good read. Really horrific in a lot of ways. And the idea of being trapped on a beach absolutely terrifies me, because I would not be able to cook fish all the time. I don't even like to touch fish. I don't even like to look at fish, for that matter. Have you guys read Island? What did you think about it? Put your thoughts and comments down below. I would love to hear what you have to say. What do you think about Richard Lehman as well while we're talking about it? I'd love to hear all that down below as well. If I had to rate Island on a 5-star basis, I'd give it about a 4 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was really solid. Again, not my favorite book ever, but it was really good. Fun read. Had a good time. Totally worth it. If you can pick up this book for a decent price, pick it up. Do not miss out on this book. I'm telling you, you'll regret it. If you wanted to start here as your first ever Lehman book, I'm telling you, there's a lot that's going to hit you at one point. I don't know what the perfect book would be to start with Lehman. Maybe Darkness Tell Us, but this is really good. You might like this. It might get you in the Lehman train. Anyway, again, put your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.